Earth is rotating, so the sun is going this direction and the shadow is moving forward. But this part didn't have time yet to disappear. The ice didn't turn into water. So there is a shift between the shadow and the lines of white. That's interesting. In a simple image, you can see a movement of the earth. If you recognize it, you can also just walk on. How about this? These people were at a conference and they made a picture of themselves. And the flash went off and they were very happy with the picture. Now, the strange thing here is that you don't find this very strange, that here they have a completely different color from here. And that is embedded in our brains. I'll show you. Would you say that this is a different color from that? Would you? Yeah, me too. I would think it's a different color. But it's not. It's the same color. Why? Well, the thing is, the environment has a certain light color and your brain compensates for that. So it takes into account the color of the environment, the light, to compensate for the color. So therefore you say this is reddish and this is bluish, but it's not. It's interesting. How about optics? I was walking in Florence one day and I looked up at this sign. It was plexiglass and it says called Telleria, so you could buy knives and scissors. And on the floor, this is a second photograph, I saw this pattern and it says here call and area. Can you see it? So that is okay, but this is flipped around. Why? How? What is this? So I photographed it and people thought I was crazy. But the thing is, this plexiglass board is slightly too big for the frame, so it got bent. This is a hollow lens, giving an image of the sun, a little focal point, focal point, focal point. Here the focal is even more bent, so the focal point is even up here. And the image is flipped back again to readable, here also. But here it's flat, so it's flipped around. So this pattern immediately says something about the shape of that thing up there. And you can see it and walk on and don't ask yourself the question. Or you could ask yourself the question. In this room there are 100 questions to ask, maybe more, about what is behind it. Fascinating. How about mathematics? This now becomes interesting. So I walk in the street and I see this pattern and I follow this woman and take this picture.
Paparazzi.
Because I could explain what this was about. This is mathematics. This is beautiful mathematics. Look, these folding patterns in her skirt are not by coincidence. Look at the way they go in different directions. This is also true for leaves and palm leaves. That's how nature folds stuff. There's mathematics and physics behind it. So I was fascinated by this skirt. How about dynamical systems? If you look in autumn and you look up, you'll see the leaves are still there at the tips of the branches. Why? The wind is strongest up there, so they should disappear earliest. No, they don't. Because there is a plant hormone starting at the roots going up, and it gets there latest, and the plant hormone actively closes the vessels to throw off the leaf. So it gets there latest, and therefore they're still there. And next time you see this pattern, you'll know why. Knowledge and what you see go together. How about this? These are two men talking to each other, and this is what men do. They talk about a subject somewhere here. They look at it and they don't mind the rest of the world. They don't face each other like that. That's what women do. And they talk at the same time, and I've tested this. They hear what they're saying, although they're talking. That's very interesting. Men can't do this. So men do it like this. Sometimes there's a pause of a minute, they don't mind. and women just keep talking. That's interesting. Now this is the busiest place in Groningen, and everybody is finding their way. There are no collisions. Why? Why not? Well, if it really tends to go wrong, they do this. You find contact. He said, hey man, what do you want? You want to cross or what? These people look in the direction where they're going, and the peripheral vision is used to avoid collisions. And everybody knows this internally. This is a law-like process. It happens. That's interesting. How about movement? Why does a ponytail move like this? Well, that's because the head is accelerating and decelerating. So this is a free sensor on her head. You can see acceleration and deceleration. And of course she is also very interesting here. So we're also studying that. Physics. You know, books, when you leave them out in the garden, they tend to flip over. Why? Well, first of all, this happened with the death of Pope John Paul II, and so the book flipped to a certain chapter, and people thought this was symbolic. But there was also physics behind it. And the physics was discovered by Daniel Bernoulli here in Groningen. He was born there and then quickly left, but we still think he's important for the city. And he showed that if you do this, see, the leaf is going up while I'm blowing over it. And that's because if air has velocity, the air pressure drops, and therefore the leaf is pushed upward. And that's why the book is flipped over. It's physics. How about the brain? Well, this picture is called bald and bald. They're both bald and bold because of testosterone. It makes you bald and bold. But they are very friendly. They are talking to each other. I like that. This is in fact the difference from what I said earlier. They're facing each other. So this must be a very special conversation. I photographed these women, and when I pressed, two people entered the frame. And he is showing something that many men do, rubbernecking. Rubbernecking. Men have rubber necks. They look at everything. And there's a reason for that. Women don't do this. She has seen him, but she doesn't have to look at him. The reason for that is this. Men have slightly better central vision, and women have slightly better peripheral vision. And of course there are more aspects to it. Maybe women don't want to see what they find interesting, and men simply don't care. Now he's also looking. He was standing there still, listening to the music. We were politely listening to this band. He was standing there, as though he was hearing music for the first time. And now she has seen it. And there he is standing. I think this may be a decisive moment in his life. Maybe he became a musician right there and then. I remember when I became a scientist. It was a decisive moment. Maybe you can remember stuff about yourself. Branching, important moments where your mind opened. That's interesting. So, the conclusion. I'm doing well in time, right? Conclusion. Creativity and science, do they go together? Yes. There are some guidelines. And with guidelines you have to be careful because you might be pulled into a certain direction. But think about them. First of all, don't follow the herd. The herd is interesting because it's going in a certain direction and it might actually carry a lot of information. They might find something or know something that you don't. So sometimes you have to be part of the herd, like here. Don't always do it. Sometimes go your own way. Secondly, switch between the mind of a child and that of a bookkeeper. Be very accurate in your science. Write stuff down. Don't make mistakes in software or recordings, in your papers. Check everything. Be a bookkeeper. But sometimes be a child. Remember when you were a child and you had wild fantasies? Keep doing that. If you write your thesis, you may have 5 papers. 4 of them are predictable and should be like they are, like the group you're working with. And the fifth one has to be a complete adventure. Try to publish something completely new. Please do. Most of your dreams are rubbish, but sometimes they carry the solution. Think of Tesla. And be imaginative, courageous and proud, but don't forget whose shoulders you stand on to look further, because most of what you know you've never thought of yourself. You just swallowed it whole and it works. So don't forget that, because there might be questions there to ask, or there is something very strong in culture. We go so fast because of culture. So, can they go together? Absolutely, absolutely. And if they can be together like this, these two brains, asymmetrically holding each other and resting from lowlands, which is a very tiring event with a lot of music, sleeping under one hat, if they can do that, why couldn't your two brain halves do it? I think they can. Thanks very much.
Very inspirational talk. So we again have a few minutes to ask questions about children's community. Again, I have a point of the person to speak. Don't you want to know? Yes.
Actually, I have an interesting question. How do you spend your day? Because you are very creative, you have very different. First time I'm meeting such interesting person. I'd like to know how you are spending your day. You are not.
Well, what I try to do is live according to this stuff. I work very hard, but I don't try to work all the time. Sometimes I simply switch off. I just sit down and try to percolate stuff upwards again. So it's all a matter of, and the other thing is, I'm still as fascinated by the world as when I was 13. When I was 13, my windows went open, and I'm still flabbergasted about reality. Absolutely. So I think that's the reason why I can keep going on. It's not only, so don't only work hard, but also keep space for new stuff. That's the trick, I think.
Thank you for your amazing speech. I have a question. Are you inspired by authorities? We heard much about how are you inspired by the environment, by the beauty of nature. Do people inspire you?
Absolutely, absolutely. I've got a lot of heroes like Richard Feynman, but also Brian Cox. Look him up. I was the day before the bomb went off in Manchester. I was in the same hall with Brian Cox, and there were as many people there around, and he did a presentation on the universe and on particle physics and the expectations and what we know about everything. He's a fantastic teacher. Look him up on YouTube. The way he talks about complex things and Brian Cox. I think he's very stimulating because he shows you can convey complex material in an understandable way for a wide audience, and that's exactly what I like to do. I like to work in TV programs and do this kind of work. So he's been very inspiring. And there are more. There's a question.
That's right.
Thank you for your speech. So you said a lot about how art can be, how science can be inspired by art. So I was wondering, is the reverse possible?
Absolutely.
Can art be inspired by science?
Yes.
And what are some examples of that? And
Yes.
the things that people talk a lot about, things like mathematical elegance and symphonies and things like that.
Yes.
So I was wondering what you have to say about that.
Yes, well, I've been working on projects in art that uses science for inspiration. I could give another lecture on that, but I'll give one simple example. If you look at facial movements, you can track that. I wrote software with that. So I can just film your face and I get the partial movements of your face. If you then do that twice, you look at another person, you start to react on their faces. If you then turn that into music, different instruments, you get a symphony by movement. We put that up, put it in the city hall, and there were hundreds of people who wanted to do that. And that's art that's inspired by science. So yes, there are many examples.